So today I'm going to show you how to make a microphone, all of these animations, including some of these which are made with geometry nodes. First I'm going to show you what it is that we are going to be creating, and afterwards I'll tell you something about how this is structured. So here it is.
Your unique sound deserves more than average. It deserves precision.
Shall we do one of those light reveal intros?
Sure. Introducing the Audio-Technica AT2020, the microphone trusted by over 30,000 creators, podcasters, and musicians worldwide.
Made with military-grade H4 carbon.
With studio-quality clarity and smart sound detection, but without breaking the bank.
I've heard those flashy Instagram edits work for Gen Z.
Cool, throw it in. Whether you're recording your first track or streaming to thousands, capture your best sound yet with the AT2020.
First things first, we're going to make a microphone, but if you don't want to do that, you can also get it for free on Gumroad. Now, if you do want to make the microphone yourself, there are reference images on Patreon which you can get for free. After that, we're going to do some of the standard practices. We're going to make a lighting setup, and this lighting setup will be used multiple times throughout the video. And after that, we're actually going to start animating. There's a light reveal animation, there is this premium looking gold particle dust type animation, a weaving pattern animation made with geometry nodes, as well as a sound detection system geometry nodes that we are creating, showing that the sound waves are bouncing off of this product, showcasing a feature in a very efficient manner. And finally, we also have one of these Instagram type edits where you can see the camera like zoo, 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 zoo. It's pretty popular on Instagram, usually used for car edits. Now, if there's anything you think looks interesting, you can always skip ahead to that time frame because I've placed the chapters in the description. So without further ado, let's get started straight away. So today we are going to be creating this realistic microphone. You might remember this model from the 33 photorealism video, which is criminally underrated by the way. And we are going to recreate it step by step. It's going to be the modeling for this video, and in other videos we're going to do the texturing and some lighting and perhaps even some animations. So I hope you're quite excited. This is what the model looks like. We can circle around it, we can have a look at what we are going to be creating. We're going to make everything from scratch. So the model, the textures, everything. So I hope you're as excited as I am, so let's get started straight away. Image, reference, Alt-R, let's click on 7, RC 90, RC 180. And now we are going to use this picture. Of course, it has a lot of perspective, but we are going to use this picture in order to kind of determine the proportions of where we should make our cuts and make our lines go. So in this way, we always have the right scale for the microphone, approximately. So let's start right away. I'm going to bring in a circle. You could also bring in a UV sphere, there's nothing wrong with that. I just like working with a circle. I'm not going to change the amount of vertices because I think it's fine like this. And my computer can handle a little bit more as well. So let's see, and let's bring in the other reference image as well, because we don't want to change this afterwards. Let's go ahead and image. This is going to be an approximation because this image is not entirely centered, or it does have a lot of perspective. But in this way, we do get some type of idea of how big this should be. So I'm going for something like this because it was closer to the camera, so it's going to appear bigger. I think this is going to be correct for this object. Maybe something like this even. Let me delete this. And we're going into the circle. So let's click on 1 and we're going to extrude this. EY, we're going to bring it in here just a little bit because I see this edge. Then I'm going to press E and S. And we're going to scale this up and maybe even bring it slightly towards the right, G and Y. Let me turn on my screencast keys, which I always forget in the beginning of the tutorial. Luckily, you guys know exactly what to do because you are so wonderful. All right, you know what? We're going to scale this down anyway. Scale this down, I just want to follow this reference a bit more. Select the outermost edge, E and Y. Let's bring it all the way over here. Now we get some type of indentation here. We're not going to do that straight away. I'm simply going to skip it, but I will take into account that we need that geometry, so I will press E and Y. Do the same right over here. And do the same right over here, E and Y. So indeed it is the case that this is going inwards just a little bit, but we don't want to do that just yet. We want it to happen proportionally all over the model. So we're simply going to do it like this for now. And let's see, we are going to make the top already. So that is a good idea. Bring in a grid fill. Let's open this up. Let's see if we can get this a bit more straight. Then I will simply press I, press E, and scale it inwards just ever so slightly. Oh, ever so slightly. E and S, and let's do it again. Make sure that these rectangles or squares are approximately the same size. Doesn't have to be perfect, but keep into account that it just has to be that way just a little bit. And for now, we're going to leave it like this. We can always make changes if we want. So basically we have a cylinder. We're going to the bottom side right now. And we need to fill this up and get this area right here. And maybe we'll model this immediately. Why not? So E, grid fill, let's bring it in there. We have to change the way this looks. So let's go over to this side. This looks a whole lot better. Anyways, if we eye this, it will not go all the way inside because it will destroy our mesh. So in this particular case, we cannot use a grid fill. I'm going to press F. I'm going to press I and make sure that we approximate the distance over there. I think we are reaching something that looks quite well. So E and S, and scale it down just a little bit. And now all we're going to do is extrude some of this. No problem, like so. Then I'm going to press I, bring it inwards. Press E, bring it outwards. So we've just got that area. We are now trying to emulate this area. So that should be a lot more since it's reaching all the way over here. So E and S, scale it up until we reach that mark. Very good. And then I'm going to press E, bring it down. E and take this approximate distance and then scale it back inwards again. And make sure that it aligns somewhat with that edge. And then we're going to do it again. Simple trick. Keep this around the same size. E and S. G and Y, just bring it down a little bit. Make sure that it's kind of the same. E and Y. E and just a little bit more. Get it in again. Let's do it one more time. S. And scale it back in again. E and S. And this one we shouldn't bring down. We should just bring it down like this. All right, all the way over, I don't know, something like this, I guess. Yeah, I think that's about right. So let's give this a subdivision. So for now, let's just press I in order to get rid of that. This is not the most beautiful looking mesh, of course. So let's auto smooth it as well. And we could add a extra loop cut right over there to make it look good. But I'm actually not going to do that. We're just going to keep this ugly part right here for now. I'm simply going to press Shift E in the places where I think it makes sense. So I'm going to select this entire edge, Shift E, bring it all the way upwards. You can also go to N item and then we see mean crease right here and you can set it to 1 or whatever you would like. I think that makes sense right over there. Cool. I think the best thing to do is to think in terms of squares. So now we have squares, okay? So these squares are basically what we want to have in the entire mesh. But these are smaller. Basically what I want to do is bring this upwards, GG. And now we get approximately the same size of squares. I'm simply going to add an extra loop cut on this one. But we want to keep this flow. We want to make sure that it looks exactly like this. Because now we have even squares all throughout, except for this one, of course, which we already changed. But this is going to be a mesh that we can work with. And the same goes for this side. Let's just give it extra geometry in order to make sure that we can work with it properly. Something like this. Doesn't have to be perfect, but the more perfect it is, the better. There you go. It's already a pretty good looking microphone, don't you think? Well, I don't think so. I guess you're wrong. Let's go ahead and make something better. So Alt-C. Let's first have a look at this area right here. As we can see, it is kinda just going inwards. I don't think this has to be very complex. As a matter of fact, I think we can simply select this entire outer loop by pressing 3 and Alt-clicking it. And then we can simply press Alt-E, faces along normals, bring it inside, and maybe, just maybe, scale it on the Y-axis just a little bit. Let's see what that looks like. I think even that we can add another one right here. Take this edge, Alt-E, and bring it outwards just a little bit. S and Y, and scale it inwards. So then we get an edge that looks like that. Bottom edge is also pretty harsh. So let's take this and make sure that we crease it, for now at least. We're going to give it a bevel later because the shading just looks a little bit better. But creasing, really nothing wrong with creasing. I often like creasing. Cool. So this is the way our microphone looks right now. We are actually pretty far already because most of these things are just logos. We need to make some holes. And we've got this area right here where it says the Audio Technica logo. But this is actually just the same process. It's not that hard. We're going to press 7. We're going to select this area. And in this case, I'm going to press I and make a line like this. And then I'm simply going to press Alt-S. And then I'm simply going to press Alt-E, extrude faces along normals, and bring it inwards just a little bit so we get that area right there. And let's see what it looks like. Wow, nailed it on the first try. Pretty cool stuff. So now we have this area right here. By the way, I'm pressing Alt-Z in order to toggle this button so we can look through the mesh. And this area is going to be a bit harder. Now, as you can see, this part actually has some body. So it's not only the outer part like this, but this part has something extra, so to say. Basically what we have to do, or what we can do, is select all of this. All right, P, separate the selection. And now we've got this part separated. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's fine. Now this inner area should be something different than the outer area. So what I'm going to do is simply take this object, Alt-C, and I'm going to scale it down. Medium point, object, set origin to geometry, scale it down. And this part will be the microphone area. So it might be too small. Let's go over here, select this, E and Y, let's give it something extra. And this part, I don't know, it might be just a little bit higher, but that could also make things more complex. So what we can do, select all of this, Control++. Let's go back to this view mode. I don't know why I'm doing this in 7, that's not the best way to do it. And now I'm just simply going to bring this upwards one more time and scale it inwards. Bring it down just a little bit. And I think we are having a fine reference for this now. Nothing wrong with this. Except maybe that those are a bit too much. So I'm going to add another loop cut. All right. So that is the inner area. Now what we need to do is have a look at this. And basically just select this entire area. Like this. Shift D, scale it up until we reach this part, and P, separate the selection. And now we've got a separate object. Is it still aligning with this well enough? Because that's basically the goal. Let's zoom in here, scale it down, G and Y, and let's make sure that it just connects with this edge. G and Y, and that is near perfect. Great. Now it might be a bit too high, so I'm going to delete those faces. Cool. So now what we need to do is remove some geometry. So what I believe that we should be doing is simply take all of this, but keep the outermost line, like so. And I think if we just simply delete this, we already get a pretty good basis. So let's take this, those 3 vertices, G and Y, let's bring it upwards to get that shape going. Then we're going to select the uppermost area, turn off proportional editing, SY0. So now it's straight again. We kind of fixed it. We can always slide around some vertices if we don't like it. Always make sure to do the bottom side at the same time as well, otherwise we're doing double work. And preferably keep into account that when you do this one, you also do this one. All right, so this looks pretty good, but we should slide this area slightly more towards this side. And maybe we can even do it for this entire edge loop all at once. And maybe we can even do it for the other side as well at the same time. So something like this. Of course, this messes around a little bit with this area, but I'm not going to be worried too much about it. Now, let's do the same for this side and this side. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct. Cool. Then, when clicking on 7, let's make sure that we get this area selected. O for proportional editing, G and Y, and let's bring it down. As a matter of fact, I might even believe that this one is redundant. So let's just remove it. And let's bring this upwards, G, Y, GG, without proportional editing. Okay, easy stuff. So now we're going to select all, Alt-E, extrude faces, and let's bring it inwards until it actually touches the rest. We press on 7, this one doesn't reach far enough. So I'm simply going to take this area, Alt-C, make sure that we get it all. G and Y, something like this. So now it's sticking out on the top. Of course, this doesn't look very appealing as of yet. We're going to fix that later. But for now, let's see what happens if we increase this. Is this actually touching? I think it is. And if it isn't, we're simply going to scale this one. All right. So in that way, it should always fit. So we pretty much get the base of this model going. We did mess something up because we also changed the scale of this, and that's not supposed to happen. So turn off proportional editing, SY0. Let's make it straight again. But of course, we already had created this loop cut. Or this extra geometry. So SY0, let's make it straight. And let's bring it upwards, G and Y, and make sure that it is aligning with what we had previously. Remember? Something like that. Make sure to do it on the same side as you did before. And if we now connect this to each other, Control J, then go into the geometry. Let's select this edge loop, zoom in, and select this edge loop, and let's select bridge edge loops. Actually looks perfect. All right, that's great. So now it's part of the original geometry once again. Let's back this up for a simple second. So Shift D X M collection, microphone backup. So let's turn off the microphone backup so we don't have to look at it the entire time. And let's have a look at this model. Well, I actually think it looks pretty good. What can I say about it? We could add a bevel modifier for now, so bevel, and let's drag it upwards of the division subsurface, and then we can see our model having some cool looking edges. Now you can play around with this, of course, and I don't like that this is flat all the way for this entire area. It should probably just have this area go upwards just a little bit. And I think that should make a bit more sense, and it does, but it's not entirely there. Let's have a look at this. Something is going wrong. Just a tiny little bit. Yeah, that's it. All right, cool. So let's first go, and I see that this top part is a bit more beveled than I thought it would be. So I'm simply going into this model once again. I'm going to select this entire loop cut, G and Y, and let's bring it down just a little bit until we get this effect, and then it should be pretty good. And yeah, that's basically it. So let's make the two buttons. Let's see, we've got one like right over there. Alt-C, we can actually see them in this picture. So there's right over there and right over there. I don't actually think we have enough geometry in order to get this to work. So there's two options from here on out. First of all, I'm going to place this in the backup. We could go over here and apply everything. Not entirely sure if that is going to be the best way to go about this. We could also add some more geometry at the places where it's necessary. So something like this, we can add that. Well, it kind of reaches this edge. So I think this is correct. Like this. I'm going to click on X, delete the faces, and actually with the subdivision surface modifier, this helps us out a lot. So I'm simply going to bring this inwards, Alt-E, extrude edges, and bring it inwards. Now it's not moving towards some place. Undo this. Now when we do this, it does have a normal. So then we delete it, and now we can take those edges and smooth them until we get this shape. All right, and we're going to do the same for those. We should have actually done it at the same time. Who cares? I'm just going to finish this model. Let's smooth this until the bevel is fixing this. All right, great. So now what we need to do is select the entire outer edge and press F. And now we actually have this area. But of course, there should be some type of cylindrical button that you can scroll, like a scroll button. Maybe we can even keep this away and simply add the scroll button. Not entirely sure. I like adding things like this and just making it black so you don't see it. Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's bring in a UV, let's bring in a cylinder. Now I think it's better to use a normal map for these buttons because they do have a lot of these small indentations. I don't think it's the best practice to actually model it unless you really want to do that and make it look very photoreal. But in most cases, let's just not do it. And let's just make sure that we get a button that looks like this. We could have given it even less geometry, by the way. But no problem, we can go over into the shader editor and let's finish this right away. Let's just do it. And then let's go over here, scroll, let's add a wave texture, see what it looks like. I think we can get those buttons to work using a wave texture. We do have some weird shading issues going on right there, but I think, so Control T, UV, let's go over here, do unwrap. Unwrap is a, oh no, that's not the right way. Unwrap. Q projection. Yeah, this is the way. So R90, and now we get evenly spaced black bars all throughout. And this side really doesn't matter that much, to be honest. So let's go over to this part and we can increase the amount of waves. Make sure that we don't have this harsh line right here. Control X, let's make sure as well that they are, well, pretty even. We can have it fade out just a little bit and then use this as the bump map for this button. So let's go plug it in the height in the normal. Let's see what this looks like. Yeah, pretty good. We make this black. And naturally, we're also going to select this and U, unwrap, angle base, doesn't really matter. Go to the UV editor and scale it down until it's basically gone. Yeah, like that. And now we've faked this, this button and let's bring it back in here. Works fine, but could be more. Increase the scale. Yeah, looks great. Cool, now let's do the same for the other side. I think it is the same process once again. So let's go into the mesh. Alt-C, let's see if we can get this to work a bit more in a mirrored fashion, something like this, probably. And then let's bring it inwards first, so E, then delete this, faces. So let's select these two edges, press GG, and let's bring it down just a little bit. And I don't believe we get shading issues by using this method. So let's do the same for the other side. So let's select this edge and this edge, GG, and let's slide it a little bit towards that side. And now we get this cool looking hole once again. Cool, so let's copy this over to the other side. Bring it upwards just a little bit. Oh, and by the way, let's hide it for now. We have some issues here, so press F. Cool, Alt-H. And now we've got it right over there. Should probably go inside a little bit more. Probably something like this. Cool, so now we've got those two buttons. We have got one on the other side as well. So I think we can get rid of this. Let's just hide it. So let's go over here to the bottom of the model and let's make a circle. So I'm simply going to select all of this. I'm going to press I, bring this inwards, and then I will delete this. Delete those faces. Now I'm going to select this entire outer edge and maybe we can simply smooth it like this. And that looks pretty decent already. But let's add a circle. So circle, let's add one. And let's set the amount of vertices to 8 because, where's my circle? It's right over here, cool. And now let's RYY, 36. And now let's RYY. Now let's RZZ, 36. Now let's RZZ minus 36. And that should align it with the rest. So let's scale this down. And we have 8 edges right over here, but we also have 8 edges right over here. 16 is what it says. So bridge those edge loops and let's see what it does for us. It's probably seated a bit too low. Yes, that is the case. So let's bring this upwards. G, Y, Y to move it on the normals. And bring it upwards. And you know what? Maybe we can even do that for this entire area as well. So G, Y, Y. Bring this upwards just a little bit. Then do the same for this one, G, Y, Y, until it makes more sense. Just maybe a bit too much. So let's select this circle and let's separate the selection. Then I'm going into this area and actually just delete all of this. I think we did something wrong somewhere along the way. No problem, simply going to delete it. Now I'm going to reconnect the circle with the mesh, so Control J. Select the circle, Control J. Yeah, select the entire area. This loop, that loop, bridge edge loops. And that actually looks pretty good. Nice. So E and S, let's scale it inwards. And that is going to be that area right over here. We're going to fill this up. F, E, bring it inwards. That already looks a little bit better. And select this area, extrude faces along normals. And let's give it this outer edge. And let's bring this from the inside. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to press I, bring this inwards and delete those faces. And then I will bring in, I will select this edge, Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's bring in a plane. Is a plane going to do the trick? So this entire area has 32 vertices. This only has 4, but it is a rectangle. So that's something to keep into account. I'm simply going to add 2 loop cuts, G and Z, and let's bring this down. And this should be, let's select those 2 as well, by the way, G and Z. And this should be the way to create this entire thing. So let's select this, subdivide. And now we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So if we do it one more time, we should have enough to select all of those and connect it with the circle. I think this is the best that we're going to get. So let's select this entire area and bring it inwards using E. Let's see what this looks like. It is actually quite good. I don't really like this mesh, but still it is good enough. And we can maybe even take this and bring it slightly down just to improve the mesh a little bit. And I think this looks pretty good actually. So there's nothing wrong with this. Now all we need to do is go back in here again and select this entire area. Press I, let's bring it inwards, and then have a small bit of it come outwards. Let's press on Control plus, and let's give this its own material, and let's give it its proper name. Inside USB. We're going to press Control I. Give this a new material, and this is the microphone body. Okay, assign. Shift D, new collection, finished, model, backup. This is actually the final model without doing the bezels. So we're going to do the bevel now. So let's go over here and let's go to the modifiers. Let's remove the bevel. Now this will immediately change the model in a horrific way. So in order to fix that, we're going to simply add some bezels. So this one is the first one, Control B. And then right over here, I might add one. Looks pretty cool. And right over here, I might add this. And this one, and maybe also this one. Let's add some bezels. It doesn't have to be a lot, by the way. I'm just going for 3. All right, looks pretty cool. Let's remove the Shift E, by the way. So let's go over here, mean crease 0. And now you can see that it's still looking the same because we beveled it. This looks pretty good. Then this area should probably get its own bevel as well. Something like this. Pretty cool. Then this one as well. Something like this. That looks fine. Then let's select this edge. Control B. I think this looks fine. Maybe this area should just be Shift E. Yeah, I think that's fine. Then we're going to select those loops. Control B. Let's give it a small bevel. Looks pretty good. Let's do the same for this area. Let's go over here and finally fix this area, like so. Let's add an extra loop cut right there and bring it in all close. Looks pretty decent. Now let's select this entire inner area, or outer area actually. All of it. Let's do the same for this one. Let's keep a little bit of consistency there. Control B, something like this. That looks nice and crisp. And for the inner area, I'm simply going to add a loop cut, slide it towards the inside. Do the same for this one. All right, that looks pretty good. I think this area is fine the way it is. So now we've actually finished and destroyed the model. This cannot be anything else anymore. I'm going to release a full course pretty soon, and it's going to contain the best lessons I've ever created. For now, if you want to upgrade your lighting game, one of the most important things that you can do in Blender to get better renders, then you can check out the link in the description to get the King of Light bundle pack. Click on subscribe, and if you're up for a challenge, then you might want to watch this video next. So in this tutorial, we are going to be texturing the model that we created in the previous one, which is the microphone. We're going to learn how to make procedural materials. You're going to learn how to make normal maps, and we're also going to add images to the texture in order to make it even more special. So I hope you're as excited as I am, and let's get started straight away. Let's start with the body material. So I'm simply going to set this to cycles first, bring in a sky texture real quick, color, sky texture, and let's just decrease the intensity, 4.3. I don't know where the sun is for now. Let's bring in a plane. So this actually has something to stand on. We can see some shadows and reflections from the plane. And now we are going to do the sun elevation, should be higher, but a little bit low. Sun size increased, and rotation wanted to come from that side so we get this cool edge highlight. And now we can work on this a little bit better. So let's go to the materials and microphone body. Let's go ahead and make the actual material. So metallic, increase it. Roughness. Let's bring in a noise texture, color in the color ramp, Control T, object from the vector, and place this in the roughness. Now let's see what this looks like. So that's giving us some detail. So let's increase the detail, let's increase the roughness, just to make it a little bit more, I don't know, smudged out or a bit more interesting looking, because nothing is entirely flat or reflective. This just gives it a little bit more of that real vibe. Cool, now let's bring down this color, and maybe we can take the black and bring it upwards just a little bit because it's not that reflective. And then let's bring this downwards ever so slightly. And now we get the body material. Yeah, I'm seeing the standard metallic type of bump effect. Pretty cool stuff. So let's take this noise texture and all of that. And let's bring in a bump map. Factor into the height, this in the normal. And we are basically going to increase the scale of this by a whole lot, like 800 or something. And we do get this type of texture then. So let's decrease the strength and decrease the distance and then increase it ever so slightly. And now we get this type of effect that often you get with those type of metallic materials. And that looks pretty damn good if you ask me. Pretty realistic looking. We have already done this one. Let's see, I think it's near perfect if I'm looking at this. Could be a bit more black or something. I don't know, it is already pretty darn black. Play around with the scale. No, this is actually fine. This is actually fine. So maybe just increase the roughness all the way until 0.88 or something. Can we increase the metallic? It does make it look a little bit better. So I'm just going to do that. Very well. Then right in here, we can change the inside USB. It's supposed to be white. It is a bunch of plastic. So I'm simply going to bring in the roughness. Maybe just place this in there. Control T, object. Make this less black because this is a pretty solid object. Something like this. We can give it a code. Weight. Would it serve to have a metallic type? Now, of course, we are lacking the logos as of yet, which I'm going to provide to you, but we're also going to make it in DaVinci Resolve. And we need to make this texture a normal and bake the normals of it. So now let's make the texture that is for the microphone right there. So I'm going into an empty area, like right over here, and bring in a curved path. And then I will take this and bring it upwards. Now I'm going into the geometry and increase the bevel shape of this, like so. Very good. This should all be straight, so SZ0, make sure that it's straight. And then all we need to do is go over here, add an array modifier, and now we get an extra piece like this. I think it's a bit too spread out from each other, so I'm going to press S. So I'm going to press S and X and make this a whole lot smaller. Something like this seems correct. Now Shift D RC90, and this area should go right over there. Now we can already see that this is a bit too much to the bottom. So let's take all of this, G and Z, and let's bring it upwards until we get something like that. Then we can delete this one, Shift D RC90, R and X. Now add another array modifier, array. Set it to 0 on the X, increase the Y until we reach that other middle part. And of course, now it should be inverted. Instead of doing this array, let's take this, Shift D, Y, let's bring it over there. And then we are simply going to invert this. So select everything S, Z minus 1. And now it's inverted. And let's make sure that it is still on the same area as this one, so make sure that this aligns. And let's see, should just be a little bit higher, I believe, something like this. So let's Control J this, let's add another array, 0, 0 on the X, let's increase it on the Y until it looks like this. And now that we've got this one, we should probably duplicate it as well. Bring it over here. And also this one should be inverted. So SZ minus 1. G and C, let's bring it upwards. Press on 3 on the numpad. And let's make sure it fits on the other one as well. And I believe that right now we should have something that looks like this. Let's bring those together as well. Array, 0 on the X. And let's increase it on the Y until we reach the middle point again. And now we can simply increase the array on both sides until we get a square. Do the same for this. Now I want these to be a little bit thicker, so I'm going into the geometry and increase the bevel depth, something like this. Copy this, then go over to that one and give it the same amount. Could be slightly better. Like this, so adjust it. Let's adjust this until it all fits well into each other. Let's just give this a try. Let's duplicate this. Let's bring this to the side. And then we're going to remove the arrays. Then we're going to remove this array. And let's remove this as well. And then we're going to do the same for this one, Shift D, Y. Let's place everything right over there. Remove this array, remove this area. And now I believe this should be tileable. We'll see. Now I've converted everything to a mesh and joined everything together. So now it looks like this, it's just a mesh. So I'm going into this mode and let's go over here, View, V on Wrap and project from View, Bounce. Let's see what we have in the UV editor. This looks all right. So let's now go over to the shader editor, click on new. Let's add an image texture. Let's give this a name, new microphone normal map. Make sure this is selected. Make sure this is selected as well. Go over here in cycles, scroll down until you see bake. Then set the bake type to normal, space to object. And this can be set to 2 pixels. And if we then press on bake, we should now have, let's open the plane. Let's bring in a plane. Let's go over here. Let's copy this. Oh, just deleted it. Copy this. Control V in this space. And let's see what it looks like. We've got a normal map. So I'm wondering if this is going to work out. We should save this, by the way. If you don't save this, then it will be removed. And the way to save it is by going into the UV editor, going to the normal map right here, and then image, save as. Now let's click on this object, shader editor, new, Control T. Let's open that image texture that we just created. Let's UV unwrap this. Let's do a cube unwrap for now. Cube projection. Then let's bring in the bump. Bump, height, normal. Looks pretty interesting. Let's make this black. We do have some weird artifacting going on over here, but I simply hope that when we scale this up, nobody will notice. Perhaps it could be a little bit less right over there. And this is starting to look like a microphone. I think this one is a bit too shiny, so we should probably make it darker. Yeah, this is more to the reference. Let's go over here. Now the reason why we have this problem is because of those edges. And actually they should have been overlapping just a little bit. So let's just fix that real quickly. Let's go over here to the shader editor. Let's add a new image texture, new microphone normal, check. And right over here, let's go into this object. Let's go to the UV editor and let's scale this up until we reach the halfway point. So now it should be cut off halfway all around the edge. And maybe this will be a little bit better. So let's have a look. I've got this selected. Let's go over to cycles. We've got this selected as well. Bake. So it is being cut off right now, which is good. Microphone right here. And let's swap this one out for our new normal map. Ah, there you go. That looks amazing. Now, we can play around with the scale of this. And we're just going to roll with this. So let's go to the shader editor. And maybe we can also use this normal map. So Shift D, Control Shift D in order to keep it connected. And we can also plug it into the alpha, but first plug it into a color ramp to make it black and white. Plug it into the alpha. And it should be inverted. I believe, yeah. Cool, so now it's inverted, if my theory is correct. Let's bring in a cube. Let's bring it upwards. And let's have a look at this. So let's increase this. It should be the other way around. And then the white towards this area. And now we can actually see the cube through this mesh. But I find this to be a little bit too much because now we can see through everything. And a simple way to fix that would be to click on this, cursor to selected, and let's bring in a cylinder, cheap and simple, RNX90, scale this down until it fits in, S and Y, bring it down, and let's make this black. So now we have a pretty good looking microphone, and all that's left to do really is to add those images to the side. But I'm also seeing right here that we haven't textured this part yet. So I'm going to select this, Control plus, somewhere over here. Let's give this a new material, assign. Let's make it black. Increase the roughness. And now it's just a little bit different than the other area we had. Let's make it a bit more black. It can be entirely black. We just added this inside area. Let's remove that for now. Let's hide it. There's actually another area like this inside. So Shift D, S, and scale it down. And make a new material out of this and scale it up. See which one we've got selected now, the inside one. And let's scale it up by a lot. So now we can't really look through it that much because there's a double layer. I didn't spot that earlier, but that is the case. So we can bring back our cylinder, which should exist because we can now scale this down, bring it a little bit to the bottom. It's more of a cube. So let's take this cube and let's scale it on the Z-axis. Let's scale it on the Y-axis like this. Let's bring it inside. I'm going to select this part right here. Bring it outwards. Let me just use modeling mode for now so we can actually see what we're doing. That could come in handy. And I'm going to make this in a circular type shape. Oh, I'm messing this up. Make sure to only use S and X. So E, S and X, something like this. And let's add a bunch of loop cuts. Let's click on the dash icon to separate this. And now we don't have to use Alt Z. And let's select this area right here. And maybe a little bit less. And turn this into a circle. First apply the scale. Circle. We can set the angle to 0. Make sure it's fitting correctly. And now I'm going to press I. Press E. Have it go inside just a little bit. Delete this. Then select the inner edge. Press F. Press I. Now it's coming outward just a little bit. Press I, bring it inwards. E, I, let's bring it inwards. And have it go outwards again. Maybe add some extra detail. This is not something we're going to see a lot. So something like this should do the trick. Give it a small subdivision. Something like this. Select this area, just press I. Let's make it a bit more straight. And now this should have a bit more of a metallic material. So let's give it a texture. Let's make it slightly yellow, metallic. Not even looking at what it looks like. Control I. Let's give it another material. It should be black. And then the inner area, I feel like right here should be a bit more silver-like. Let's turn off the subdivision for now. Yeah, so let's make this a bit more silver. This time, slightly towards the bluish side, metallic, roughness down. Then select this one, Control plus. Scale it down, by the way. Let's take this, let's scale it down as well. And Control plus. It doesn't really matter how this looks, by the way. It's just a couple of small details in order to make it better. Like this. And now let's go out of this mode. Yeah, we're not really seeing that much of it. But still, I think it's a little bit better. Just a little bit more for the photorealism. So I'm going to select the inner one. And let's increase the black towards a bit more of a whitish color. So we can still look through it, but not that much. And I feel like this is really getting there. So now all that's left are the icons and the symbols. So let's create those real quickly. Now for the final part, we are going to add these images to our model. But before we do that, let's actually turn off the sky texture. So let's set it to 0. And I'm going to add in a area light. Bring it upwards, give it a slight angle, make it a little bit more powerful. Yeah, I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to place the other one on this side and maybe decrease the power just a little bit, like so. Let's first start with what we've got right here, the Audio Technica symbol, which should be placed over here. So let's unwrap this, unwrap, and let's do a cube projection. And I'm going into the texture. We are going to add a new principled BSDF, going to Ctrl-0 this. And I don't think we need to make a new UV map for this one, because this one is procedural and we are not using the UVs yet. So let's go over here, add an image texture. Let's open this up, pictures, there it is. Let's add it in and let's use it as the vector. Now I'm going to make this white and we are in the wrong texture. Cool. So let's break this down. Let's plug this in. Let's copy all of this. Let's delete it. Let's go to this slot right here. And this one in the top, this one in the bottom, this one in the vector, and this one in the surface. All right, there it is. Let's switch these two around. It is upside down. So let's go over here to the UV editor. I believe we still have it selected. Audio Technica logo. Let's go into edit mode. SY-1. Now let's select all of this, except for this area right here where we've got the logo. And scale it down into the blacks. And then it should be gone. Now it's kind of metallic. So I'm going to the shader editor and bring the roughness down and make this slightly more grayish. So for the next part, underneath this button right here, let's go to the shader editor, to the microphone body. We should have a pretty similar texture for the headphones. So let's duplicate this. Let's bring them together. Let's add an image texture. And this one should go into the vector. Not sure where it is. But what we do need to do is simply UV unwrap this, unwrap it as a cube. Nothing should change because this is all driven by the object. And then for this area, let's go to the UV editor. Let's go to the correct image, which is this one. Scale it up. U, angle based. There you go. SY-1 in order to flip it upside down. SX-1 to mirror it. And we can barely see it because we didn't change the texture. So let's make this white for now. And then we have to flip those around. Cool. Let's go back to the UV editor. This is way too large. Scale this up. Cool. Now let's decrease the roughness. Let's make it a little bit more grayish, like so. And that looks pretty cool already. Now on the other side, we have the mic com monitor. And if you're hearing me twisting around the microphone, I'm sorry about that. So let's add in all of this. Once again, let's duplicate it. Bring in a new mix shader. Let's plug this image into the vector and this one into the bottom. And we should probably give this its own UV. So let's go over here to the UV maps, add a new one, and let's call it mic com. Let's enable it. Let's remove this coordinate, and let's remove that coordinate, UV map, this UV map into the vector. We're going to duplicate it, but we're going to select the mic com and place it into this vector. And now, if we unwrap this again, we should still have this little logo right here, but the Audio Technica should be able to be placed right over there. Let's have a look at this. We probably need to select anywhere from here to here. Go into the UV editor. Let's first unwrap this angle based. UV editor. Let's go to our new image. This one. Or 90. There you go. And it should be placed almost near to the top of this. So the only problem we have left right now is basically all the other areas. Let's just get it down, bring it into a black part, and it should be gone. Shader editor. This looks pretty good. Let's continue with the next part, which is going to be the little USB logo. should be placed right over here. Now I downloaded that one simply from the internet. All we need to do is repeat this entire structure. So simply go over here, duplicate all of this. Let's create a new UV map. I'm going to call it USB logo. Let's enable this. Let's set this to USB logo. Let's place this into the vector, this one into the bottom slot, and select our image. And this time it should be the other way around. I think it's going to be something like this. So U, unwrap, angle based. There it is. Let's go over to the UV editor, switch this image towards the USB logo. Let's bring this towards the middle. SY -1 to flip it around. SX -1 to flip it once more. And scale it up because it's quite small, but we also have those other areas. So Control I. And scale this into a wide area. So let's select our entire microphone. Let's place it in its own collection. Microphone full. Alright, so now we should have everything selected. RI 180. And now it looks like this. Very good. Now, first of all, for this little area, let's select the inside, Control plus, until we get this entire part. And then right here, I'm going to give this the black material that we made before. Now it looks like that. Very good. File, shader editor. We should be in the black material still. Let's make a new UV map for this. Let's call it back. Let's remove this one, UV map, bring it in there. This is the original UV map, UV in there. New UV map for this one. Let's duplicate all of this. Let's bring it in there and we're going to select back. Duplicate this, duplicate that one, and connect it up like so. So let's add the texture then. U, angle based, UV editor. Oh, we should probably change the image. Let's go over to back, R90. Let's bring it in there a little bit smaller. SY -1, SX -1. Let's move it towards the middle. Alright, that's starting to look pretty good. Let's have a look. We still have the other side, and we do. So things are moving along nicely, because now we can work on this area. Shader editor. Let's go back into the microphone body, and let's extend this once more, using the very same techniques. Plug it in there. We have a new UV map. And it's going to be called specifications, this one into the vector, choose a new image, UV unwrap, cube projection, UV editor, go to the right image. Alright, SY -1, SX -1, Control I, S0. One more image to go. Let's go to the shader editor. Let's do this entire setup again and make a new UV map. Headphone logo. Let's select it. Let's change it. Let's just select this area right here. U, unwrap, angle based, and change the image. Go to the UV editor. Select all. SY -1, SX -1. Doesn't really matter for this specific subject. Control I, S0. And scale it away. So now we have basically finished the entire model. It all has their respective logos and designs and cool little stuff like that. And then I will add a empty. Let's bring the empty somewhere towards the middle. Scale it up so we can actually see it. Select the entire microphone. Select the empty last. Control P, object, keep transform. And now we've got an empty. And this allows us to rotate and play around with the model. I do feel like this part of the model kind of got messed up. We're going to select this from the top. Simply keep on going until we got everything, until that area, and then select it. P, separate the selection. Let's go into edit mode. Let's destroy this entire area. Let's add a mirror. Y, let's bring it above the subdivision. I don't know why it is this dark. Simply joining them back together kind of fixed it. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this part of the course. I hope you learned a lot and we have made something pretty cool. Pretty detailed, has some cool stuff going on right there. We've got the images as well. This always adds this extra flow to the entire model. And it was a pretty simple model. But all in all, I think we're quite happy with the result. And I will see you in the next one. This is how you light products in less than 100 seconds. We start off with the model, and this technique is goated. So we actually open up the side panel and add an HDRI. In this case, I'm going to use Sunset JHB Central, which is an all-time favorite. I will apply this HDRI, go into the camera, and turn the background to transparent. I will then bring in a plane, and this plane can be scaled up, go into edit mode, extrude it on the back, and turn it all the way up. Control A to apply the scale, take this backline and bevel it, and now shade it smooth. We can also make it black. I'm going to add a light right here, and I will place it somewhere along this line and increase the power. I will then make a new light and place it on the back side. I will place it right over there in order to get a good looking edge light. I will once again increase the power. Finally, I will duplicate this light and I will place it right over here. And I will make it bigger and less powerful, only to fill in some of those shadows. In 5 seconds, we now have a lighting setup that looks very cool and professional. This is called a 3-point lighting setup. We've got the key light over here, which is a bit harsher. We have a rim light on the back, which gives us some contours. And we have the fill light in order to fill in some dark shadows. And since we have a couple of seconds left, I'm also going to add a spotlight and go to the Gobo browser and make sure to apply this Real Normal Tree preset. I will then place this on the background right over here and rotate it in such a fashion. Increase the exposure all the way, go to the radius and make it a bit more soft. Change the position and play around with the power. And that is how you make a professional product lighting setup in less than 100 seconds. So today I'm going to show you how to make one of these lighting animations, and it's very simple and it's usually used as the beginning to reveal a product and the type of contours it has. So I am in a completely dark scene, I've removed the HDRI and everything else, and I will simply bring in an area light. I will then rotate this with -90 degrees and move it backwards and scale it upwards as well. If we then increase the exposure, we can already see that the side of this project is being lit. Now, if you want to have less on these sides, you can scale it on the x-axis, but if you want more, you can scale it to the other side on the x-axis. I'm going to keep it somewhat in the middle, and I think this reveals the contours of the product good enough. So I'm going to use this light and start from the bottom. So right over here. You can also start from the top, do whatever you like. I'm going to press I, and I'm also going to press I on the power. And then I will go to frame 72, because it's a pretty slow animation. It's going to be 3 seconds. And then I will G and Z, and move this all the way over here, press I. Then I will set the power to 0 and we'll press I. So now we will have a lighting animation showing the contours like this. Now, if you want, you can select all of this, press T and make it linear. And that will make sure that it's a bit more consistent in the way it shows. So usually these kind of animations are followed up with a very similar animation, but from a different angle. So what we could do is go to frame 73, increase the amount right here, and I'm simply going to add a new camera. Shift A, camera, view, cameras, set active object as camera, and then right here in the timeline I will press Ctrl B, and this will make camera 001 our camera from frame 73 onwards. I'm going to set this to 1, click on our previous camera, which is this one, go to frame 1 and click on Ctrl B. So now we have camera, and then camera 001 from frame 73. So first we have this animation, pop, and then it's going into the other camera, which is camera 00. So let's select it, somewhere over there perhaps. Let's increase the focal length to make it very zoomed in. And then I will add another area light, and I will place this light somewhere over here perhaps. Let's have a look from the camera and make it do something like that. That could be pretty cool. So right here, I will make sure that our lighting is placed on this area, press I. Then I'll go ahead a couple of frames, I don't know where, maybe some like 103. And I will simply move this light towards this side and press I. And let's have a look. Let's play this. It's a bit too fast. So we can definitely extend this. Let's select all of this and make it linear. Let's make it start from frame 73, just like our camera. And what I will do is select that light, set the power to 0, Then in the middle, it should be 10 or whatever you like. Press I, and then on the end, it should be 0 again. So in that fashion, we will get a cool reveal animation like that. So there we have the contours, and then we have our other little lighting animation doing its thing. You could also do like a camera animation here. Do whatever you like. I'm just simply showing you the technique in order to make these lighting animations like so. So this is the contours. Then we have one of those lights that's coming in and showing the logo. So I hope you learned a lot. If you are interested in upgrading your lighting game, then I highly recommend checking out the King of Light in the description. And for the next video, we are going to be creating this. So click here to watch it now.
Your unique sound deserves more than average. It deserves precision.
Shall we do one of those light reveal intros?
Sure. Introducing the Audio-Technica AT2020, the microphone trusted by over 30,000 creators, podcasters, and musicians worldwide.
Made with military-grade H4 carbon.
With studio-quality clarity and smart sound detection, but without breaking the bank.
I've heard those flashy Instagram edits work for Gen Z.
Cool. Throw it in. Whether you're recording your first track or streaming to thousands, capture your best sound yet with the AT2020.
So today we are going to be creating this awesome looking animation. It has gold particles, it has glass backgrounds and cool stuff like that. And I just generally think it looks very fine. So let's get started straight away. I am in this blend file right now. We have our microphone. Now what I want to do is animate a camera, which I'm going to bring in right now. Shift A, camera. Let me also turn on the screencast keys. I'm hoping I'm not talking too fast for you because I am for me. There you go. And now you can see exactly what I'm doing on the screen. Now, what I want to do is animate this camera based on an empty. I think that's a very fine technique if you want to have those cool 3D looking animations. So let's go over here to this empty, Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's add in a new empty. I like using the sphere. I'm going to bring the sphere right over there. Then I will select the camera, select the sphere last, Control P, and object keep transform. Now what happens if we scale this sphere, then the camera is going to come along. If we rotate it, the camera is going to be rotated. So all we have to do now is make sure that our camera is in a logical first place. I'm going to set it to 85 millimeters. Zoom it out, something like this. And now we can basically play around with this empty in order to make a very cool looking animation. And that's basically what I'm going to be doing right now. As you remember from the previous shot, we were kind of zooming into this and it's turning into a shadow. We could do another lighting animation, but I'm kind of done with that. So let's just make a cool motion animation. First of all, I'm going to open up the timeline right here. Timeline, go to the first frame, and now I'll find a spot that I think looks very good. So I will go over here. Maybe I'll even rotate it like so. ZZ, RZ, and rotate it like this. We can even move this empty if we like to do that. I don't know if I'm going to do that right now. Maybe I will. Just do something like this. Press I. Then go to frame 72. It's going to be 72 frames. And then I will move this backwards like so. I will also scale it out. I will rotate it. I will rotate it on the Z axis. And I want it to be completely visible, like something like this perhaps. And also in the middle. And press I. Let's see what that looks like. Oof. I think that looks pretty cool. Of course, we need to change the graph editor. So let's go into the graph editor. Let's select all of this. I will normalize it a dot, and I will simply make this a fast animation in the beginning and have it slow down over time. Nothing too crazy, something like this. But I also wanted to go faster near the end. So I'm going to take this left handle and place it all the way over here. And if this is looping nicely, then you know you've done something correct. Now you can always make changes to this animation, but I just want to keep going and show you guys exactly how to make the background. So I'm going to add mesh, plane, scale this up, bring this down, and now let's bring this up as well. Make sure that it's covering the entire screen all the time. So right here, that's not the case. I'm going right here. By the way, the HDRI I'm using is JHB Central. I don't think it has to be turned on, but we'll figure it out later on. So now we have a plane. I will also add this bevel right here, as I always do. Shade it smooth, then go over to the shader editor, click on new, make this black, increase the metallic, and play around with the roughness, stuff like that. So now we have a black background very fast. Hoppa. All right, looks pretty cool, Now there's two more things that we need to do. We're going to have particles move over a trail, and we're also going to add some glass type of effects that look very cool for the background. So let's do that first, because it's easy. We're going to add a mesh cube. Let's scale it on the x-axis, scale it on the y-axis. Let's bring it back. Let's add a new material to this, and what do you know? It is going to be a glass BSDF. Who would have guessed that? BSDF into the surface and play around with the roughness and the IOR, but I find that we have a lack of light in here. So I will make a very quick lighting setup so it makes a bit more sense. So let's add a light, area light. Let's place this one over here. Let's make it bigger, a little bit stronger, move it backwards. Let's add another one. Let's do it over here. Let's make it very big, just to fill in some of those shadows. Right there, doesn't have to be too much. Very cool. Let's duplicate that. Let's go into this mode. Let's place it on the back of this model, and we can also make it a tad bit smaller and perhaps rotate it around to make it come a bit from the top, like so. Very cool. Very cool. So that's those three lights. So I'm simply going to add those in their own collection. I'm going to call it Light Links Mics. And then I will go into Lumio right over there. Make sure that our microphone is also in its own collection. So select Hierarchy, M. I'm going to call it Drop the Mic. Now we'll go into Lumio, Light Linking, add our, let's see which one is it, Light Links Mics, and the Drop the Mic right there. Add light linking, and now it should only work on our model. And we can toggle this on and off to see if it's working, and it is, of course. Now that we have this, let's scale it up like so. We can also open the HDRI browser and perhaps increase the strength a bit. We need some more light in the back here. So I'm going to add a point light. Let's go over there. Let's increase the power and the exposure until we get something that's kind of cool looking. Maybe something like this, because we want to have a taste of this glass. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to place this to the side. Let's open the modifiers. Let's add an array. And let's make sure the distance is slightly more than this. And let's go ahead and increase that by a bit. As in C, to scale it up all the way. Let's go into the camera. I will also make sure that the viewport display is set to Passepartout right here in the camera. And now we have this cool glass background. But I think the reflections are a bit too much, so I'll go into the glass BSDF and increase the roughness ever so slightly. And now let's have a look. Pretty nice, pretty nice. What we can also do is take this glass, let's move it to the front. Oh, I also got the plane. Let's take this glass, duplicate it, move it to the front. Let's remove the array, like so. And let's add a bevel. And this will change the shape and the way it looks. Right here. So let's increase this and play around with this until you get something that you think looks pretty cool. And now you can select this, place it in front of the camera. It's like somewhere over here. And that will give it a depth perspective. So what I'm going to do is click on the camera, go into the camera settings, and click on depth of field. Now for the depth of field object, we want to use something close to the mic or on the mic. So in this case, the mic is not really moving. So I'm going to add a empty arrow, because that way I can see which one it is. Click on the camera. For the depth of field focus on object, I'm going to click on our empty X. And I accidentally selected an area lamp. It should be an empty. There you go. And now we'll place this on the front of this model, so that is absolutely in focus. And if we play around with the depth of field, you will be able to see that the background as well as the foreground is going to be slightly blurred. Now you can place as many of these as you like. I'm for now just going to continue with this tutorial, because we need to make some gold particles that are swirling around or flying inside of the screen, looking very cool. So let's add a curve. I like using the path. I'm going to bring it right in there. Make sure you have the overlays turned on, otherwise you won't be able to see the path. I will actually delete everything except for one. So now we have this, and I can now decide exactly what this will look like. So I will simply move myself along this object while pressing E, like so, moving upwards to get this swirling type motion. All right. Something like this. And I can't even see what I'm doing, but I just know it's good enough. Just know. It's experience. All right. So right here, I will place the 3D cursor. Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's bring in a mesh UV sphere. Let's scale this down. And this is going to be our particle emitter. So if we go to the particle system, click on plus, we have a particle system, and then it will emit particles. Very good. Now, these are not the type of particles that we want to emit. So let's make a collection first of gold dust. I'm going to add a mesh icosphere right over there, and I will click on new in the shader editor, give it some type of goldish color, make it metallic, decrease the roughness, and shade it smooth. Now, I will also make sure to turn on proportional editing, go into edit mode, and just switch this up a bit. Just make sure it looks a bit more particly-like. All right, so something like this, just switch those around. And I will also duplicate it, make it very small, because I want different sizes for the particles without having to play around with the scale randomness too much. So right over here, I will do this and change the shape. And now we have 4 of those. Maybe change the shape of this one as well. 4 of those, select all of these, press M to make a new collection. I'm going to call it gold particles. Very good. Let's move them to the side so they don't hinder our vision. Let's click on the particle system. Let's go to render. Instead of halo, select collection and increase the scale randomness. Select the collection gold particles and pick random. And then we will have a particle system that is spawning gold particles. I still think they are a bit too large, so I'm going to decrease the scale by a whole lot. And then I will turn on the children, set it to simple, because interpolated doesn't work on emission objects, only simple works. And you need to play around with the display and make sure that the render is the same as the display amount. That's very important, otherwise you're going to get some very weird looking results. Either way, we have our particle system. Click on the path, go to this physics properties tab and add a force field. I'm simply going to keep it at force, but I will increase the flow to 10. Let's go into the particle system. In the field weights, let's turn off gravity. All right, so now it's going to move outwards all this time. Click on the path, go to the physics properties, and for the strength, decrease it to -100, simply so we can see what happens. And I feel like I am forgetting a step, and that is the case because the shape is set to point. It should be set to curve because we are working with a curve. And now all of these particles will follow this path. Of course, the strength is way too much, so I'm just going to set it to -0.5 or something, or -5. And that will make sure that all of these particles are moving on the path. Now, they are not living long enough. These are some very volatile creatures, and we need to make sure to extend their lifetime. So go into the particle system and increase the lifetime. I don't care how long it is. 300 is probably fine. Now we can click back on our force field, go to the physics properties tab and increase the noise. And this will make sure that we have a slightly different motion going on here. If you like to do that, you don't have to do that. I just think it looks slightly better. Very cool. Now, if you want it to be faster in the beginning, that's also possible. Simply go over here, because right now there are barely any particles. And we can also see where they are spawning from. We definitely don't want to have that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this line and move it outside of the screen. Then I will go into the line, Shift S, cursor to selected, take the ball, selection to cursor. And right now we will have something that is impossible to see in the screen. So that's very nice, but it's not coming far enough. So what I want to do is select the force field, go to the very first frame, and let's increase the power of the force to like -60 and press I, and then on frame 14, it could be like -10. So in that fashion, we will have the particles in the screen already. They are gold and amazing looking. Oh, and now we do have this ball still in the screen right here. So we should probably fix that later on. I'm not going to bother you with it right now. But this will make sure that we have our gold particles, and you can make them as fast as you want. Or what you can also do is shift the entire animation. So if you click on this and take all of these properties, then you can have the particle system start first. There you go. The particle system is already over there. And now it is doing the animation. And then you will have the gold particles circling around the microphone already. So if you want to have that, you can definitely do that as well very easily. And that's basically all I had to teach you in this tutorial. So we made use of an empty to swirl around the microphone using a cool 3D camera animation. We added some glass type backgrounds and foregrounds in order to get this cinematic type of quality, this effect where you have the blur. And then we also added a particle system that's following a path. So considering all of this, I hope you learned a lot, and if you did, click on subscribe and I will see you in the next one. So in this tutorial we are going to be creating this geometry nodes animation. So I hope you're ready for it, and let's get started straight away. So first of all, I am going to delete this light and I will click on the cube, bring this upwards and turn this into a geometry node editor. Click on new and I will actually delete this and make sure that we have a grid. And on the grid, we can spawn different lines. So I'm going to make an instance on points node because we want to instance some things on the points of this grid. And it will be a curve line. And this curve line will be instanced on the grid, like so. Now, in my specific case, I don't want a 3-dimensional layer. I actually want it to be only one. So what I can do is set the vertices x to 1. And that will make sure that we only work on the y. So I'm going to set the size on the x to 0 because we don't need it anyways. And I'm going to set the size on the y to 5, like this. Now, we only have 3 vertices on those 5 meters. So I'm actually going to turn this into 20. And that will make sure that we have more of those lines on the grid. Now, we can determine how long this is. I actually want it to be a bit longer. I'm just going to do 5 for now. Very specific reason for that is that we now have a 5x5 plane. So if we add a plane, RY 90, let's scale this up like so. If I now bring this up, it should be the same size, and that is the case. So we have a perfect square, what I'm trying to say. And now I want to make sure that the curve actually is wavy. In order to do that, we are going to make use of a wave texture. So I will add a set position node. This will be placed right over there. And now we need to offset this. Of course, if we offset it like this, well, nothing kind of happens now, does it? So we need to specify where the offset is supposed to take place. And in order to do that, I will add a wave texture, and this wave texture can be plugged into the offset. Now, nothing happens. And why is that? Well, it's actually quite simple. We only have 2 vertices on this line. So there's only 2 dots in space, one over here and one over here. So nothing in between can be manipulated. So what we should do is press Shift A and resample the curve, because we want to determine how many points are between point A and point B. How many of them are there? So let's do this and increase the count. We can go into the wave texture and set bands to rings. Starting to look a bit more interesting. I want all the detail and stuff like that to go to 0. And if we look at the phase offset, it is doing its little curly thing. But what I find to be very annoying is that it's going into the positive. So this is positive. And then it's going into the negative again. And then into the positive, into the negative. I don't like that. I actually want it to be a smooth wave. So how can we do that? Very simple stuff. We have to isolate a certain axis on which this happens. Let's add a separate XYZ node. I'm going to plug the color into the vector. And then we need to have a combine XYZ node, because as we are able to see, this is a float. It's going into a vector diamond. So we need to make sure that we have a vector diamond for the vector diamond to be completely happy. And wow, now it has been solved. We have no positive, negative. So at first it was going like this, kind of like the graph of your favorite cryptocurrency. Now we also want to make sure that we can manipulate how far the amplitude of the wave can get. So this is the frequency, is the amount of waves that we have in between those points. And if we increase the scale, we get a higher frequency. But we also want to be able to manipulate the amplitude. So let's do that right now by adding a map range node. And where should it be added? Should it be added in the vector? No, it should be added into the float right here. Now let's play around with the from min and from max right over there. And you can control the amplitude with the to max value and the from max value. So do whatever you want. You can set this to 1, for example, and then play around with the to max, which is going to be lower, something like this. Awesome, so now we have waves that make sense, but I don't think that this amplitude is enough. I want there to be more. Increase the scale until I get to a point where I'm like, yeah, I guess that's good. There's something like this, but it's becoming very choppy, and that is because we don't have enough geometry to work with. So let's increase the resample curve. So now we have a pretty cute looking wave going all the way around this, and I want to make sure, and now I want to turn this into something that can be animated first. So I'm going to make sure that we add a trim curve node. And this trim curve allows us to animate this value. Now, just to be clear, I want to have this in the modifier stack as well, so I don't have to go into each geometry node setup all the time and play around with this. So I'm going to simply add a group input. And I'm not even going to name it, because I'm not in the mood. I'm simply going to plug it into end. And there you have it, end. So now I can animate it from the modifier stack instead of having to go into the geometry node editor every single time. So let's turn this curve into something tangible, something that the viewport can display. So let's add a curve to mesh node. And we need to specify what type of profile this curve has. So let's also add a curve circle, because we want to have, well, like a circular type. So curve circle, let's decrease the radius by a bunch. And what do we have here? A very cool looking wave type pattern that's turned into a mesh, which we can animate using the end value. This is going to be a tricky one, by the way, because we have very little control over the frequency in this. Now, what we want to have is something that comes from the other side as well, but we have a frequency problem. So what that means is that right here we have 20 lines. If I duplicate this and rotate it around, we still have 20 lines, like so. But if we count the frequency on this, we have very little control over the frequency because we are using a wave texture with a scale output. So it's not like we can say, oh, give it a frequency of 10 or 20 or something like that. We are playing around with the scale and getting something. So that's a problem. And the way to fix this is to have full mathematical control over the amount and frequencies that we are working with, so that we can simply type in the numbers. That's what it all comes down to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this wave texture type stuff, but I'm going to keep the combine XYZ. So first of all, you want to add a position node, and we're going to plug this position into a distance node. This is a vector node. You can see that, it's purple. And then we'll add a map node set to add. We're going to add the distance, and I'm going to plug this into the x-axis and the vector into the offset. So I'm going to duplicate this and add a multiply node. And this really doesn't do that much either, but it starts to make sense once we duplicate this again and add in a sine, and not the sine as in like a drawing, but the sine as in a sinusoidal wave, like this. All right, so now we have a sinusoidal wave, and the multiply right here determines how many waves we have. So look at how cool this looks. Now, this is the frequency determinator. So let's set this to 5, for example. Let's turn add, set it to 1, just to keep the values normal. And all we have to do is set this to a, and now we can check the value, so it's 6. Let's have a look. It's probably going to be 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so that's the case. Let's set the value to 12. I'm going to count it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome. Now, naturally, we also want to have control over the amplitude, not only the frequency. And a very simple way to do that is simply by duplicating this multiply node, bringing it right behind it. And now the amplitude is going to be magnified by 12 times. But if we set this to 0.3, it will be a very normal looking amplitude, something like this. Now what does this mean? What actually changed? We have the very same result. What changed is that we now have control over the values. If we play with this multiply, now I know that 5 is actually 6, that 12 is actually 10, stuff like that. Which means that I know exactly how many lines I have here, instead of using a randomized generator like the wave texture. So we just made it a bit more simple for ourselves, simply by adding this simple node setup. And by the way, this node setup is genius. You're probably going to use this a lot. Let's make a group input. Group input, let's plug the multiply value right here. Let's open up the end panel. We have value, and this is the frequency, wave frequency. All right. Then I'm going to do the wave amplitude. Wave amplitude. Frequency is how many times it occurs, and amplitude is how high the wave is going. All right, so now we have those here as well, which means we have a wave, and it can be animated using the end slider. So I'm going to set this to 24. Well, because now it should be the case that we have 20. So this should probably make it possible to interlock these without problems. So Shift D, RX 90, GZ 2.5, GY 2.5, make it exactly in the middle, G and Z, G and Y. Forget about the amplitude, we'll fix that later. The frequency has 20, we have 20 lines, so now they fit in with each other perfectly. That is great. We solved the problem mathematically. Awesome. Now I'm going to select this, Shift D, SX -1, and bring it over to this side. And then I'm going to take this one, Shift D, Z, bring it over there, SX -1, G and X, and let's move it backwards ever so slightly. So now we have this interlocking pattern, which looks very cool, and it is perfect. I love this. I love that it's perfect. And now we need to make sure that all of these are placed correctly. So let's G and X this and make sure that everything is placed in its respective position. That makes sense. In theory, if I select all of these, let's do that, hold Alt and animate the end function, then they should all interlock into each other. So let's have a look at this animation. There you go. And it is interlocking perfectly with each other. Now, of course, you can also play around with this in the timeline. I'm going to set this to cycles. You can go into the graph editor and change the speed of these animations. So maybe you want it to come fast in the beginning, then slow down for a while, and then go fast out of the frame again. That is definitely something that you can do. So now all that's left to do is add an HDRI. Let's give it a black type of texture. Let's go into the geometry node editor. Right here, add a set material node and give this a material. And the material is obviously going to be black and maybe metallic, slightly less rough. That's basically it. Now I've shown what I wanted to show, and you can make any type of animation you like with this. Have some fun with it. And now, of course, this is supposed to represent the part of the microphone right here, which is being built up. And I'm going to zoom out of that. And then at the same time, I will zoom out of the actual microphone. So it's kind of a little trick, a little hack in order to make sure this entire thing flows. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, click on subscribe and I will see you in the next one. So today we are going to be creating an animation that showcases a specific feature of a product. And the product is the microphone. Let's get started straight away. I'm already in a scene. You might recognize this from the lighting tutorial, which we did before, lighting in 100 seconds. And then you get this beautiful lighting setup. Now, what I'm going to do is first bring in Shift A, empty. Let's bring in a sphere. I'm going to bring this upwards ever so slightly because I wanted to start from the cardioid area. Then I'm going to select this camera, select this one last, Control P, object, keep transform. Then I'm going to select this and we want to zoom out of this. So let's do that. Go to the very first frame. Let's scale in. I believe if I remember correctly, we are moving like this. So it would be nice if we can continue that motion. So I'm simply going to add an image right here in the camera of the previous render. So I'm going to select R empty and align it somewhat with the other part. So we're going to select this empty, press I, go to frame 49 because I want it to be 2 seconds. And now we're just going to rotate it out, and we also want to scale it so that it becomes visible in a better manner, and press I. And next up, it should probably be halted right over here, and then we're going to zoom in and show the back side, but there is no background here. So we have a choice. We can either move the camera just a little bit, like this perhaps, press I, and the rest we're going to be doing with the empty of the microphone. So select the microphone, keep it at frame 49, press I. Then let's go to frame, whatever it was, what was it, 100. Let's turn off the image from the camera, by the way, it's annoying me, like so. Frame 100, and now this one can be rotated on the RYY, and it could come slightly closer. Press I, and press I on this empty. So what do we have now in total? So it's zooming out. Whew. Then it's moving into the back side, showing the back. And what am I going to do? I'm simply going to add our previous setup for the cardioid with the interlocking waves that we did in the previous tutorial. And I'm going to change some things to it. And the things that I changed, quite simple. I went right over here, and usually we had a curved line plugged into this, which gives us this. But what I did this time is Shift A, curve, Bezier, and now we get a Bezier curve right there. And then I shift click on this one, go to the modifiers and set this to, and click on copy to select it. So now this Bezier curve has the same properties. Why does this matter? Well, I'm going to plug the group input into the curve of the resample curve. And this means that whatever we drew, look at this, we have the Bezier curve. Whatever we drew is going to be shown right here. That also means that if we click on the drawing tool right here and draw something, that our curve is going to look like that. I think that we can now use this for something useful right over there. Now, we have sound waves coming in here. So let's go into edit mode. Let's draw this up and going out. That looks beautiful. I think it's near done. Now we might have to play around with a couple of these settings. So this is what I did. Let me just remove it so we can do it again. All right. So this is the original setup. We have the X in the X. We can also try the Z, for example, because in this case, that makes a bit more sense. Now, what we can also do is use a spline parameter to decide where the 0 and the 1 is. I'm going to show you exactly what that means because it might sound like voodoo, which it honestly is. So if we place the vector of the spline parameter into the selection of the set position, then what will happen? Absolutely nothing, but it becomes clear. Once you play around with the wave frequencies, what's going on? This area specifically right here is stuck. So I'm going to undo this, and now watch what happens with this. All right, it's going all over the place. But if we plug the factor into the selection of the set position, what happens? At least those dots are going to stand still. So now basically all we want to do is make this stronger because I want the waves to hit the microphone, and in order to show that the microphone kills the sound, we're going to kill the wave. So I'm going to add a map range node right over there, and play around with these values. So now this area is becoming 0. We don't want that. I want it to be on the other side. So we're going to flip those around from min to 1, from max to 0. And now if we play around with this, we can decide exactly where it is becoming this type. Let's change the wave amplitude to be a bit more logical. Decrease the frequency because 100 is a lot. It's something like this. And now I'm simply going to place it on the microphone. And perhaps we need a little bit less. So let's change the amount of vertices we got here, and we can also decrease the size. And now how can we animate this? Simply using the add right here. But I do feel like now this is not moving anymore. Well, we can also just animate the end value, like this. And if we want the waves to continue, we can at the same time animate this value right here. So what I'm going to do is we have this end value, but I can also plug the end value into the add. Now what happens is that it will continuously wave, and as it hits the cardioid microphone part, it will continue to wave, but then the wave there gets broken up. Now we might want to use another material than this boring black material that we got right here. I guess it is material 004. Now we want to change the color because it is just a black color, but what I want to do is have this color be red because it's evil sound, and then this color will be green because it has been cancelled. It has been cancelled out. So what I'm going to do, initially I thought I could just plug a store named attribute right here between the map range and the set position, and then I found out it really doesn't work like that. So we have to use a capture attribute right here. The resample curve can go into the geometry, and this output can go into the set position. Now we don't want to use the map range result. For some reason, it is very tough to get a gradient to work like that. So instead, we are going to use the index right here, but I don't want to plug it in just yet because I want to compare it to another number because we want a very specific type of index. Right over here, I'm going to set this to integer, plug the index into A, and the result right here. Now, I'm going to take the output of this result and place it into the group output in an empty socket, this one. So now we have a result right here, which should be named. So I'm going to call it index. Now let's go over to the shader editor. And right now we have a pretty boring black color. So let's just delete that. I will bring in an emission, plug it in there. Now it will become white. And then I'll bring in an attribute node. And I'm going to call it index. Color into the color. Now, as you can see, this index is black. And if we plug a color ramp in between, it will probably increase it. Which means that we have the first index selected. That's great. Now, watch the magic happen. I'm going to make sure that we add a mixed color node. I will use this factor as the factor. This will be red and the B will be green. Now we want this entire area to be green because the waves are bad and the straight ones are good. So I'm going into the geometry node editor. And once again, we have the indexes, and let's just click, 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 all the way until 67 because I already did it and I know the value is 67. So now we have this part that's red and this is green, which means that if we play with this on the end animation, the evil waves are coming in, and then, they are being cancelled out, which is also why they are made straight. And now everything is happy. Everybody is happy. What a beautiful story. What a beautiful story. I wish I came up with this myself. Anyway, so I'm basically just going into the graph editor. Let's select the empty for the camera, which is this one, graph editor. And I also want to select the empty of the microphone right here. So now let's click on normalize. Let's have a look at this. All right, so that's Chinese. I don't know what it says, but we can probably figure something out. I want it to be, let's see, what do we have? All right, yes, that. So I want it to be fast in the beginning. Oof. Very good, but right here there should be a moment where it is continuing onwards like this. All right, that looks pretty cool. And then I will select this one, also make it go fast in the beginning. Oof. That looks nice, but this could be a bit more aggressive. So I'll take all the left handles and move them to the right. Take all the right handles of this one and move them towards this side. And in order to continue that motion, what I'm going to do is go to frame 160, for example, and I will simply rotate our camera. And this will make it a bit easier for us instead of doing the microphone again. Let's go into the graph editor and make sure everything is looking nice. And now let's do the animation of the curves. So right here, as soon as it reaches this point, I want the animation to start. So maybe like frame 95. I'm going to set the end value to 0, press I, and I'm going to move to frame, well, perhaps 160, and press I. All right. Let's go over here. T linear. Let's do a transition animation. So click on this, press I, and I'm simply going to maybe scale it in and rotate it weirdly, like so. I don't know, maybe something cool. Let's go into the graph editor. The way to do it, let's also select the scale. Normalize, and then I will take these handles, these ones, and make sure that it looks like that. Yeah, there you go. Frame 180. Let's see how that flows. 180. Cool, we've got our microphone doing its little thing. So in this tutorial you learned exactly how to animate a microphone in a very cool manner. We zoomed out of the microphone texture itself, and then we added some sound waves that are cancelled out whenever they reach this specific product, because that is a feature of this product. We used geometry nodes in order to make the waves and make it stop, color graded using the correct indices. And right now we have a very cool looking animation. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, click on subscribe and I'll see you in the next one. So today we are going to be creating this WebUI animation, and it's surprisingly simple. I've got my microphone set up right here with an HDRI. And basically what I want to do is bring in an image, then divide those up and make sure that we get some 3D parts of it. So you can get all the reference images from Patreon for free. I'm going to Shift A image, add a mesh plane. So right here I've added this Google image as the first one, and I'm going into edit mode. I will place some loop cuts. So I will place one right over there. I will also place one right here because I want those buttons to be separated right here. I want the search button to be separated. I'm also going to place a loop cut right over there, and right over there, right over there. I'm going to place a loop cut right here. All right, awesome. So I'm going to select this first, and I will press P, separate the selection. So this is now its own selection, and this one can have a different material. So I'm going to give it a glass material and perhaps place the roughness down just a little bit, and we can play around with the IOR later. So now I'm going into this material right here. I will select those two, and before we actually make changes, let's add some modifiers. So first of all, I'm going to add a solidify modifier, and I will add a bevel modifier. So we have some thickness to this. You can make this however thick you would like. I'm going to increase the segments of the bevel and play around with the way this looks just a little bit. Maybe something like that is cool. Now I'm going right here, P, separate the selection. Then I will select this one, P, separate the selection. And I think we forgot to place a loop cut right over there. But this one can also be separated. Then I'm going to select the entire Google search option, P, separate the selection, separate the selection. And what I'm simply going to do is select all of this, press M, new collection, and I will call it WebUI. So WebUI. And now I will bring in another empty mesh plane and do the same for the Amazon website. You can do this with whatever e-commerce website you want, or you can make your own layout. I just simply took a screenshot from Amazon to make it simple. Let's have a look at this. We're going to place a loop cut right over there. We can remove this entire top part, and then I will simply place a loop cut right here and also one right over there. Cool. Now this part can be deleted, and this one should be separated from the other ones like this. Now I'm going to select both of these, and then I will select one of these last, go into the modifiers, and then I'll set this to copy to selected, copy to selected. And now this should also have some thickness and a bevel. So let's add a camera, and then I will select all the WebUI RX90, press on 0. And we basically want to make the final frame. So we're going to frame, let's say 66. And then right over there, I will rotate this around and make sure that we get the final look. So perhaps it should be placed a bit more into the center where we can see it. That's nice. Then I'm going to select these. And we should have probably rotated it at the same time as this one. No problem, I'm just going to do it by eye for now. RZ. And then I will also take the microphone and scale it down until it fits. right over there. Cool. Now we might need to play around with where this is located. So let's place it right over here. We can maybe scale it up as well because it's a perspective trick. And maybe we can even have it come through the glass. Awesome. So now we'll give it a background. So let's click on plane, RX 90. Let's bring this back. And then I will duplicate this, Shift D, RX 90, RX 90. Bring it down, bring it over here. And I will immediately give this a material shader editor, new, Control Shift D. And the one I'm using is Wood 58. Principled. Let's go over here, U, unwrap, Q projection, UV editor, and rotate it 90 degrees. Let's have a look. Looks nice. RX90. I'm also going to make sure it's coming somewhat towards the middle of this. So it's facing upwards just a little bit, R and X. All right, so what I'm going to do, go to the timeline and go to frame 66, for example. First thing I'm going to do is click on our microphone and it has the correct position right there. I'm going to press on all of these as well. So select all the WebUI and then press I. And now everything should have its respective keyframe. And then I will simply select some of these things like this one and I will place it, I don't know, this one can go over here. I'm going to GZZ everything to move it on the normal axis. And the Amazon can come from the back, like so. And now I'm simply going to select everything again and press I. What do we have now? Now it is coming inwards and forming the UI. That's great. And what I want to do now is go over here, take our microphone, make sure it is somewhere over here, maybe slightly rotate it, play around with it a little bit, something like this. Press I, so this also has an animation. I'm going to press Shift S, cursor to selected. Let's make sure that we add an empty sphere, spherical empty. Select the camera, select the spherical empty last, Control P, keep transform. And now we basically want the camera to end right here. So I'm going to frame 66, I believe it was frame 66. Yes, that's correct. Press I, and then go to frame 1, and let's play around with this. So maybe we can rotate it in some different type of fashions, something like this, and press I. And now I also want to add a depth of field perspective. Shift right mouse click on the microphone. Let's add another empty. This time I'm going to use arrows because I find it easy to see what it is. Go to the camera, select depth of field, and select the arrows, which we've got right now. Then we're going to select the arrow, then select the body of the microphone, Control P, and Object Keep Transform. So now it will stick to the microphone. Now let's go back into the camera and let's actually give this some f-stop. So now some things in the background are becoming blurred and that makes it seem a bit more cinematic, or so I find that to be the case. Cool, but we still don't have an animation. So I'm going to select our microphone empty and then all the WebUI, holding Control. And then I will go into the graph editor. Now, working with this separately, bit by bit, it's a bit too much work for my liking. So what I like to do, simply grab all of this, S and X, and let's bring it closer towards each other, like so. And then it is moving slowly, whoop, and it's making its main motion right here, whoop. And now all we need to do is go to our spherical empty, which I believe is this one, and give it a final animation starting from frame 66, maybe to 75. And whatever way we rotate it in is the same way that we have to rotate the next one as well. On one axis, I think this axis right here, and press I. Let's have a look. It's coming in too slowly. It's simply a Z rotation, so I'm going to open that up. Right over here, and I will move this handle to be a bit more aggressive. There you go. Could be even more aggressive though, so I think we can place this all the way up here. All right, we're going to cut right here anyways, so let's do that. So now we have the basis of this animation. It's already starting to look pretty good. Then it's going to transition into a new shot. So let's go over there, it's frame 69. And I'm going to add a new camera right here. And in the timeline, I will press Ctrl B, and this will make it a separate camera. Now it's going to switch cameras. Oh, we forgot to place the first camera. That's always handy. Let's see, where is it? Where is our original camera? This one. Go to frame 1, Ctrl B. Now let's have a look. So it's doing the animation, up, switching out, and then we move towards the other camera. So bring in a new mesh plane, Shift A, Image, Mesh Plane, which simply has the Amazon part built into it. I'm going to place it right here. I will place the 3D cursor right there. Let's add another spherical empty camera, spherical empty, Ctrl P, keep transform. And then from here on out, I'm going to place a keyframe on the spherical empty. And now I will rotate it in the same fashion as we did the previous one. And now it's in the way in our previous render. So what I'm going to do is go over here. It's the Amazon microphone image. And right here, I will turn it off in the render. And on frame 71, it should be turned on. So press I right there. And now all we need to do is go to this spherical empty, go to the graph editor and move this upwards because we want it to be fast in the beginning. Cool. Let's have a look in this mode. Yeah. Did you see the transition? I'm going to bring this down so you can see it better. There you go. So it's transitioning nicely into the next shot. Now the final thing I'm going to add is a mouse. So I'm going to go make a cube, scale this down. I'm going to place 2 loop cuts right there. I will E this to bring it out. Then I will select the entire top area and S and X to bring it inside. So now we have a mouse, very simple stuff. And we can Ctrl A, apply the scale, add a bevel for example, in order to make it look slightly more round. Increase the amount of this. That's great. Let's give it a new material. I'm going to give it glass. Let's bring the scale down. I think this looks pretty cool. All right, so now all we need to do is place a play button right here. So I'm going to add another cube like this. S and Y, G and Y. And this one should just be a play button. So I'm simply going to take this line, S and Z. And now that is a play button. I'm going to make this one darker. So let's make sure it looks like this with a bit of reflectiveness as well. Let's add a bevel. And now we have a play button as well. So let's go ahead and make a path for this thing to click on. I'm going to click right there, curve, path, RC 90. I will delete those vertices. And now we'll specify the path for our mouse. Maybe something like this. Then I'm going to select this vertex, Shift S, cursor to selected. Select the mouse, Shift S, selection to cursor. Then I will go into the constraints right here, follow path. Make sure to follow this curve that we just created. And now it is offset. So let's go to the item, set all of this to 0, and it should be placed back. I'm going to set the curve. I'm going to set it to follow curve. So in that way, it will follow along with the rotation of the curve instead of just doing its own thing in the wrong direction. All right. And now it's going to click on it. And of course, we can rotate it just a little bit, make sure this looks cool. Starting from this camera, I'm going to bring the offset all the way over here. Press I, then go to the final-ish frame. That's going to be 110. And let's decrease this until our mouse has reached this point, which it has right here. Press I. So now it's already slowing down. And then I'm going to press I right here. So now we have our play button, and I actually want to add a little clicking animation right here. So what I'll do is select this object, click on I, and then 3 or 4 frames in the future, I will bring it back and scale it up, press I, and then 2 frames in the future, I will rotate it like this and actually make sure that it's clicking this button. And 1 frame before that, I want to press I on the play button. And then on frame 113, I'm going to scale this up to maybe make it seem as if it has been clicked. And then a couple of frames ahead, I will scale it down again. There you go. Up. Yeah, I think that looks pretty cool. So now all we need to do is place some lighting, and I'm going to add a light right here. I'm going to place it on this side, make it a little bit further away, and have it shine quite brightly over there. Shift D. Let's place it on the other side as well. Maybe somewhere over here, so we get that cool looking rim light. What I can do is add a gobo. So light, spotlight. Let's go over here. I'm simply going to add this one that I've already set up. Let's increase the power, place it right there. Let's increase the radius. Let's place the spotlight on the wall. I think that looks pretty cool. So let's see, bam, we've got a pretty cool animation right there. Up. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Of course, you can play around with the graph editor and make things a little bit different, make it more of your own, but this is the basis of making a WebUI animation the simple way, because we now created it using simple images that we took apart and added some bevels to. So I hope in this video you learned how to create a very simple, stylistic looking WebUI animation for your product, how to transition that using multiple cameras and using some path animations, some camera parented animations, and well, it actually was quite a lot. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, click on subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.
Whether you're recording your first track or streaming to thousands, capture your best sound yet with the AT2020.
So today we are going to be creating one of those Instagram style animations, and it's actually a lot simpler than you think. Now I've already got my camera set up. I brought in an empty and I parented my camera to the empty simply by doing this, Control P, object keep transform. And now it will move along with the empty. Very simple stuff. Now in the previous shot from this mini series, we had a zoom in into this area right there. So I also want to start with a zoom on for this shot. First, I need to take a base point. What is going to be the base point of our render? I think something like this already looks pretty cool. So I'm going to press I. This is going to be our starting position. Then on frame 24, I want to zoom in. So I'm going to scale our empty down. And I'm also going to rotate it on the Z. And perhaps even move it on the X, like this, to make sure that we have this area exactly in the screen. Press I. And now I'm going to copy the first frame, go to frame 48, right over here, and place it right there. So now it's zooming in, it's going back. Very good. Now we need to count each time 24, and let's do 72 then. Rotate it like this, press I. And now what I will do is something wholly different, but I will continue this motion, just so you know. So I will take this one again, copy it, and go to frame 96, and this is what we have. Zooming in, zooming out, going like that, and going like that. And now what I want to do is go right here and make a new camera. Let's see, I will simply duplicate this camera, bring it forward. Now go back to frame 1, Control B, in the timeline, and that will place our camera right there. And we're going like this, we're going like that. And it's doing its little rotation thing. We should probably play around with the graph editor for now. And it will soon make sense why I added the other camera as well, because this is going to be our close-up camera and we don't have to make second animations because it's already doing it for us. So what we have to do is simply keep animating this empty until it is completely done. So let's have a look. What do we have now? We have this, whoop, whoop, whoop. So it's moving to the side. I think that's a bit slow. We'll see later. 96, 120 that is. And I'm simply going to rotate it like this. I'm also going to do a top vision like so. And maybe I'll even zoom in. Let's have a look. Up. Going to the side, going to the side. Chip. Going to the top, going back, showing this, going back, and looping. How cool is that? All right. Yeah, pretty easy stuff. But perhaps we think it is too slow. So let's set the cursor right here. Select everything as 0.5. I mean, for Instagram, no, I'm going to do it differently. I find that this rotation right here, taking 1 second, that's too long. So I want this entire piece to be halved. So instead of 72, which is 24, we're going to set it to 60. And this one's going to be right over there. And this one's going to be set to 72. So now let's specify where we want our second camera to come in. Chup, chup. So it's moving to the side. And right now when it's moving back in the middle, I think 65 could be a cool place to add this camera. Chup, chup. Let's have a look at this. Seems a bit choppy. So let's set it to 60. Still seems choppy. 70. Oh, that looks kind of cool. So let's select that. Previous camera, Control B. And let's make sure to place it on frame 96. Camera 001 on this frame. And you can figure this out for yourself and what you think looks cool. Alright, and it loops. Bam, 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 showing some cool zoom-ins. And now all we need to do is make sure that it looks good. So let's go into the graph editor. And there are a couple of things that we need to get going. I've got normalize turned on, by the way. I'm going to press on A and look at everything. Yeah, so we have to take into account. So let's set this to individual centers first. And let's scale this on the x-axis. And let's have a look at the result. So this is now only on that motion that we need to see. So the moving motion, we're going to fix the silences in between later on. Okay, so it could be a little bit faster. But now there are also these areas, especially in the Z rotation, I reckon, where it is going to be standing still. Like this one, SY0. Select both of these. S and X, and make sure that it kind of looks like the other side, like this. And that's basically it. So you need to make sure that your graph is going very fast towards the endpoint where it's supposed to reach. Then it takes a moment of silence where it's going to stand still, and then it's going to move out again in a faster fashion. And you can switch between different cameras during those animations, and both of these cameras are parented to the same empty, so they should make the same movement. I'm going to play around with this some more to get a better looking animation, and as you can see it also loops, which I think looks pretty cool. And then you simply have to turn on motion blur and render it out. If you like this tutorial, click on subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching the mini-series about the microphone. If you would like to try out the King of Light bundle pack, then I've got a link in the description that leads to that page.
Your unique sound deserves more than average. It deserves precision.
Shall we do one of those light reveal intros?
Sure. Introducing the Audio-Technica AT2020, the microphone trusted by over 30,000 creators, podcasters, and musicians worldwide.
Made with military-grade H4 carbon.
With studio-quality clarity and smart sound detection, but without breaking the bank.
I've heard those flashy Instagram edits work for Gen Z.
Cool, throw it in. Whether you're recording your first track or streaming to thousands, capture your best sound yet with the AT2020.